Whispers in the Holler. I was 19 years old when I went to live with my Aunt Clara in Thurman, West Virginia. Some called it a proper town, though if you've ever seen it, you'd know better. It wasn't but a handful of brick buildings huddled along the New River, rail tracks cutting straight through like veins of iron, and the coal company owning every last stone and soul within it. It was 1926, and Thurman was the sort of place folks whispered about but never truly lived in. Men lived in the mines, boys died in them, and women like my aunt tried to scrape together enough dignity not to vanish in the black dust that settled over everything. I'd come from Charleston after my mama took sick and passed. My daddy had been gone years, killed in a mine collapse near Beckley. Clara was the only kin left willing to take me in, though I'd overheard her muttering once that she didn't want me, not really. But I was young, could cook, could sew, could carry water up the hill, and in Thurmond, a girl with 2 good hands was worth more than one with a smile. It was on my first week there that I heard the warnings. They didn't come from my aunt, no. Clara kept her head down, her lips pursed, and her Bible worn thin from pages turned by anxious fingers. But from the men, black-faced from the pits, coughing soot between teeth, I heard them. A word they wouldn't quite say all the way. A mutter about something they called the holler's breath. They'd speak of it like a sickness in the air, or a fog that came rolling down the mountain thicker than smoke. They said it wasn't weather, wasn't wind, wasn't spirit nor devil, but a thing older than coal, older than the stone they split every day, older than the river itself. And if the breath found you, it didn't leave just bones. I laughed it off at first. What else could a girl do when surrounded by men who coughed up death and spat stories like chewed tobacco? But the way they said it, eyes cast sideways, words cut short, stuck under my skin. It wasn't long before I found out it wasn't just a story. Clara's house stood at the edge of town, past the depot, where the rail track slipped into shadow between 2 cliffs. The house leaned against the hillside, boards warped, one window patched with tin, another with cardboard. Inside, the air always smelled of coal oil and damp stone, no matter how many times I scrubbed. That first Saturday, Clara told me to fetch water from the spring beyond the tracks. I went at dusk, bucket in hand, the sky turning bruise-colored above the ridges. The spring bubbled out from under a shale shelf, and the ground there was slick with moss. I was bent down filling the pail when the air turned wrong. It wasn't just quiet. It was hollow, like the woods had been scraped out of sound. No crickets, no water trickling, not even the faint whistle of a train from the gorge. I felt the weight of it press against my ears until they popped. Then came the wind. Not a breeze, not natural. It slid cold across the back of my neck like breath, like someone leaning too close. I stood up fast, bucket sloshing, and turned. There was nothing behind me, but across the tracks, in the thick timber, something shifted. A ripple, like heat rising off a road, but black, darker than the coming night. It slid through the trees, silent, bending the trunks as it passed, though no branch snapped, no leaf stirred. The pail dropped from my hand, and then came the sound. It was faint at first, like someone sighing, long, ragged, wet with hunger, but it swelled, filling the holler, until it rattled my teeth and shook the marrow inside my bones. I ran blind, spilling water down my dress, stumbling on ties between the tracks, scraping my palms raw when I fell. I didn't stop until I was through Clara's door, bolt drawn, lamp lit, and still the air outside moaned as if it wanted to be let in. Clara looked at me once, pale as wax. "You went at dusk," she said. "Don't never go at dusk again." By Monday, the first man was found. They said his name was Harland, a young one, no older than 23. He'd been walking home from the tipple yard last shift, same as always. But they found him stretched across the tracks at the edge of town. I saw him myself. Couldn't help it. The whole town gathered. He wasn't cut by no train, though. No. Harlan's body was split open from throat to belly, his insides dragged out like someone had hooked him with invisible hands and pulled until the skin tore. His ribs were spread wide, snapped clean through, and his lungs, dear Lord, his lungs were missing. Just a hollow cage, black and wet. The men muttered about a bear, about a train, about knives, but none of those things left a man inside out. That night I didn't sleep. I listened, and somewhere out there, past the ridges, I swore I heard that same ragged sigh threading through the trees. And I knew. Whatever had found Harlan by the tracks, it was the same thing that had breathed down my neck. The coal town should have carried on like always. Death was common as rain. But Harlan's body changed something. The men worked quieter. They didn't joke or spit or call to one another across the yard. They kept their lamps burning longer, even in daylight. At the boarding house, the women crossed themselves when the whistle blew, and more than once I saw men pour out their liquor before drinking, like an offering. By Wednesday, another was found. His name was Jonah Price, 17, maybe 18. Worked the slate line with his mother cooking in the boarding house. They found him by the riverbank at dawn, face up, arms spread like he'd been laid in a coffin. Only his face wasn't his face no more. It was gone, peeled clean, jawbone showing through the red like an open smile. His eyes had been pressed deep into his skull, popped like soft eggs. What was left of his skin hung in strips against the stones, caught in the weeds like someone had scrubbed him raw against them. Folks swore he drowned, swore a train must have caught him, swore anything that made sense. But there wasn't a soul who could stand to look long at that body without spitting to the ground and muttering, "The Holler's breath." That night, the fog rolled down the ridges. Not mist like you'd expect. No silver drifting through the trees. No. This fog was black, heavy. It poured into town like tar made thin, curling down the streets, licking up against doorways. And with it came the sound, that ragged sigh, wet, hungry, shaking the walls so hard Clara's lamp rattled and near fell. She pressed her back against the door, rocking herself, whispering prayers through her teeth. "Don't breathe deep, girl," she hissed. "Don't you let it in your lungs." And Lord, I wanted to listen. But something in that fog pressed against the glass of the window, and it was warm, like a hand laid flat on the other side. I swear to you I felt it. The pain bending in, my breath trying to match its breath, my chest rising when it sighed. I clutched my nightdress tight and forced myself to breathe shallow, shallow, until my head swam. And then it passed. By morning, the fog was gone. But two more men weren't. They found them by the company store, both laid across the porch, side by side. No skin on their hands. The flesh had been worn down to cords and bone, their nails stripped off clean. Their bellies were sunken, ribs cracked out like white teeth. Their tongues, Jesus God, their tongues were gone, ripped straight from their throats, leaving holes black and glistening. And their chests, swollen so tight their shirts near tore, like they were filled up with something that wasn't theirs. When the doctor cut one open, he fell back screaming. Inside that man's chest weren't lungs. It was coal dust, packed wet, black, choking. The smell of the mines spilled out of him, thick enough to sting the eyes. That was when the preacher said it plain. This ain't God's hand. It ain't man's. It's the mountain's breath. Come for its due. I went to the old woman on the far end of the holler. Some called her a witch. Some called her crazy. but I'd seen her walking at dusk, clutching bundles of herbs, her shawl flapping like a crow's wings. The woman's shack was half sunk into the hillside, roof patched with tar paper, bones hanging from the eaves like charms. Inside it stank of sage and smoke. She was bent near double, hair white as spider webs, teeth gone but for 2 yellow stumps. I told her what I'd seen. The fog, the hand on the window, the men split open, stuffed with dust. And she nodded, slow, like she'd been waiting. "Breath of the mountain," she croaked. "Older than us, older than your daddy's daddy's daddy. Was here before the first tree, before the first man cut stone. You think you can dig in its chest, pull its black blood, burn it for your lamps, and it won't notice?" Her eyes rolled white. "It notices. Every mouthful it takes, it's only giving back what you stole. Only worse. Always worse." I asked her if it could be stopped. She spat, brown and wet, on the floor. "Stopped? No, child. Only endured. You don't breathe it in. You don't walk in its fog, and you don't linger where the sigh comes low. That's all. It takes what it wants. You're still here. That means it ain't taken you yet. Pray it don't." That night, the black fog came heavier. It filled the streets, pressed against doors, curled under cracks in the floorboards. Men choked in their sleep. Women woke with bloody mouths. The preacher's wife clawed her own throat raw, tearing until ribbons of flesh hung from her neck. And I sat awake, every lamp lit, staring at the window as something pressed against it again. Harder this time. This time, the glass cracked. A line split right down the pane, and I swear to you, I swear, I saw a shape leaning through. Not a face, not a body, just the impression of one. Blacker than the fog, darker than the dark. It bent close, and it sighed. I screamed, and Clara slapped me so hard my teeth cut my lip. She dragged me back, both of us heaving shallow gasps until the lamp near burned out. When morning came, the window was shattered, and the preacher was dead on his church steps, skin gone from his face, ribs cracked, lungs nothing but dust. By Friday, Thurman was a graveyard in waiting. You could smell it. Rot, coal dust, sweat slick with fear. The street stayed empty, curtains drawn, doors barred. The company men packed their books and fled by train, leaving behind families with no way out. And the fog never fully left. Even in daylight it clung to the alleys, pooling low, rolling between the depot's brick walls like smoke that had forgotten its fire. That's when the holler screamed. A sound that tore the day wide open, louder than the whistle, louder than dynamite in the mines. A scream that came from everywhere. Sky, stone, water, from inside your very chest. Men dropped their tools and ran. Women snatched up babies and prayed. Some threw themselves straight into the river, their bodies carried off before anyone could count them. And then the killings began. At the company store, a crowd begged for flour and salt. The clerk refused. The fog curled in behind them. One by one, their chests swelled. Their ribs bowed outward, shirts straining as if hands inside them were pushing. Their mouths opened, but no cries came. Only coal dust, pouring in thick black streams. Some clawed at their bellies until their nails snapped. Others fell to their knees, vomiting dust until their faces split open from the strain. 10 bodies lay in the street. The clerk shot himself before the fog touched him. I ran blind into the alley by the boarding house. The women had lit lamps, thrown them across the porch, screaming hymns as the boards caught fire. But the fog didn't burn. It slid through the flames, coiling up the stairs, crawling through the cracks. The women screamed louder as one by one their voices broke into choking, rattling coughs. I saw them through the smoke, tearing at their throats, ripping strips of flesh from their necks. blood hissing as fire took their dresses. By the time the roof gave, the women weren't screaming no more. They were only sighing. I don't know why I went to the church. Maybe I wanted to see if God had any power left. The doors were wide. Inside, the pews were filled, not with people, but with husks. The preacher's wife, the children, the old men, all seated straight, faces peeled, ribs cracked outward, every chest hollow, and the black fog moved among them, weaving slow, curling through the ribs like smoke through a stove grate. That was when it turned, not with eyes, not with shape, but I knew. It saw me. The sigh deepened, thick and wet, shaking the church until the rafters split. The pews rattled, bones clattering like loose stones. The corpses leaned forward all at once, jaws creaking, dust spilling from their mouths. They stood. Every last one of them stood, their necks snapping as they lifted their hollow faces toward me. And they sighed. I fled. Out the door, down the tracks, lungs raw from shallow breath. The fog poured after me, faster than it had before, rolling thick, hissing through the cracks of houses, pulling screams from every doorway. The town was breaking. Men burst from windows, skin flayed from their backs, bones snapping through. Women stumbled blind, tongues torn, bellies swelling until they split like sacks of grain. The fog pulled it all into itself. Every scream, every body, every scrap of blood, and it chased me. Somehow I reached the old woman's shack at the far end of the holler. She was waiting. Not inside. Outside, crouched low, bare feet in the dirt, muttering to the ground like it might answer. When she saw me, she grabbed my face in both hands, her nails digging deep enough to draw blood. "It wants you," she hissed. "You breathed it. You let it in." And deep inside, past the shallow gasps, past the tight breaths, I felt it. Something black, something heavy coiled deep in my lungs. Her eyes went wide and she let me go like I was fire. "Run, child. Run till you're past the ridges, past the tracks. Don't you ever come back." I asked her what would happen to her. She only laughed, dry and thin, before stepping straight into the fog as it reached the shack. Her scream never came, only a sigh. I don't remember running more. I only remember the train. The last one out. The conductor shouting, waving me on, his face gray with fear. I threw myself aboard as it lurched forward, the whistle cutting through the mountain like a scream that wasn't human. I looked back. The town was gone, covered in black. No lights, no voices, only fog spilling through the holler, climbing the ridges, reaching higher like it meant to choke the stars. And in my chest, the sigh came with me. I tell you this with the breath still in me. Nights when I close my eyes, I feel it stir. When the fog rolls thick and heavy outside, I hear it whisper in my ribs. Sometimes I cough, and the handkerchief comes away black. I lived, but part of me never left Thurmond. Part of me never will. And if the breath took that whole town, if it's patient as stone, then one day it'll come for the rest of us too. All it takes is one breath too deep.